Welcome to Excelsior 32, the online news source for the Excelsior Project from the New York Council of Deliberation.
All right, good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to Excelsior Initiative's June presentation. Tonight we're going to be talking about one of John Maxwell's books, Developing the Leader Within You 2.0. And if you guys are seeing things okay, I'm going to get things moving. So what we're going to do today, we're going to do 4 chapters from this book, Developing the Leader Within You. A little bit about the book. It was first released in 1993, and it's now pretty much considered a classic work because it revolutionized the way that leaders are made. By examining the differences between leadership styles, Maxwell outlines principles for inspiring, motivating, and influencing others from any type of leadership position, including as a business executive, a church leader, a teacher, or even a parent. In this thoroughly revised and updated edition, Maxwell includes 2 new chapters to include the leadership insights and practices he has learned in the decades since the first edition, so that you'll receive everything you need to know to take a significant step in your leadership journey. My name is Rick Powell, and I am going to be talking about Chapter 1 of this book. It's called Influence. A little bit about myself. I'm an active member of Supreme Council for New York, and I'm one of 3 Maxwell-trained brothers that are part of this Excelsior team, the others being Bob Siebold, who will follow myself, and then Bill Edwards, who will follow Bob with significant chapters following that. So my chapter is on influence. And so according to John Maxwell, the definition of leadership is just that. It's influence. And we like to say here with Excelsior that leadership is not body specific. It isn't just about the Scottish Rite or Grand Lodge. We believe that leadership skills are needed in every facet of life, whether it's at home, work, church, fraternal groups, doesn't really matter. Leadership does not point itself at any specific group. That would be Masonic education. So Masonic leadership, or just leadership, is all about influence. And as John Maxwell likes to say, becoming a better leader changes lives. So many people just don't develop as leaders, and there's a lot of assumptions about that. The first is, I'm not a born leader, so I can't lead. And to that, Maxwell says leadership can be developed, improved by anyone who is willing to put in the time and the effort. Another assumption is that having a title will make me a better leader. And we would like to think that you don't need to be appointed to a position of leadership. You may have a title, but you still could be terrible at leading. Experience will make me a leader. Tenure doesn't always guarantee that you'll have leadership ability. It's more likely to create a sense of entitlement. And finally, one last assumption is that I'm going to wait till I get a position to start being a leader. And if that's the way you're approaching things, by the time you get there, it's probably going to be a little bit late. So Maxwell and those of us as part of the Excelsior team really believe that you should start learning your leadership skills before you get your position. So we got a couple of quotes here, a trio of quotes. Leadership is the ability to obtain followers. That comes from a James C. George's. And then from John Maxwell himself, he says, influence is the beginning of true leadership. And then finally, a leader with no followers It's just someone taking a walk. Masonry has a multitude of great leaders that have never been graced with a title. Go to your lodge, go to your valley, look around. There's a lot of guys that don't want to be presiding officers, but if you watch them, you'll see that they're leaders in their own right. So we'll take some insights. We'll take a look at some insights about influence. So the first is everyone influences someone. So the next time you're in a group, as I just said, observe everybody. You should be able to find a prominent leader within that group. You influence others, and in turn, you are influenced by others. And realizing your potential as a leader is your responsibility. We don't always know who or how much we influence. Title and positions don't always matter. We've already said that. Significant events can leave marks on all of our lives and our memories. And every generation has some sort of event that they remember. And sometimes small things can make big impressions. So going back to every generation has events that they remember. We can certainly look at storming of D-Day, which we're talking about a lot lately. We remember 9/11. We remember Pearl Harbor, and how people reacted to those really influenced and changed their lives. So, and then sometimes really small things, something somebody says to you at an event or while you're out somewhere, that can really make a big impression. Maxwell likes to say the best investment in tomorrow is to develop your influence today. So he then references a guy named Dylan Scheider and his power triangle. And that his power triangle consists of communication, recognition, and influence. So we constantly are talking about how you should become a better communicator. If you can become a better communicator, you will see that you'll get more recognition, and in turn, you will create more influence. Previously, with Excelsior and with the Grand Lodge team here in New York, we've concentrated initially on a book by Maxwell called Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. And we started with that because we really believe that communication is key to it all. So we've got a couple of videos on our YouTube page that Bob Siebold did for our Excelsior sessions here. And we've also gone out to several valleys and done a longer presentation on that, the teachings of Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. Maxwell talks about the 5 levels of leadership. And starting at the very bottom, at the base, we've got position. He equates that with rights. And then above that, we have permission, which he relates to relationships. Production is all about results. The 4th level is people development, in other words, reproduction. And finally, at the top is the pinnacle, and that's all about respect. So let's look at level 1, position. Position is leadership before any real influence with those being led. So people who have been appointed to a position may have authority, but that authority doesn't exceed their job description. So people will follow simply because that person has a title or a position of authority. And again, they will only follow as far as they have to. So if there's no influence, they will do things that the person in the position tells them that they have to do, but they probably won't go out beyond that. Positional leaders do have certain rights. They are there to enforce rules, tell people how to do their jobs, and to use the power they have been granted. Now, real leaders know the difference between position and influence. They have common characteristics. They look for security based on their title, usually often more than their own talent. They rely on their leader's influence rather than their own. And they can't get people to follow them beyond their defined authority. So the differences between bosses and leaders are, here's a few examples. Bosses drive workers, leaders coach them. Bosses depend upon authority, leaders depend upon goodwill. Bosses inspire fear, leaders inspire enthusiasm. Bosses say I, and leaders, they say we. Level 2 is permission. And again, mentioned before, this is all about good relationships. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. People who are unwilling or unable to build solid, lasting relationships soon discover that they are also unable to sustain lasting, affecting leadership. Here in level 2, personal connections are the key. You really need to get out and make those personal connections with the folks that you are trying to lead. And successful leaders at this level will focus their time and their energy on the needs and desires of their team, and they will connect with them. And as you connect and you build those relationships, you also will earn trust. And once you do that, you start to develop real influence. The folks on your team will want to work together more, and they'll be more cooperative with one another, and the environment will be much more positive. People will stay longer, and they'll work together. Next up, we have level 3, production. Production simply is getting things done. You're working together to produce results. If you have results in your relationships, you add those two together, you will develop a team who likes each other, and then will get things done. And this, my friends, is a very powerful combination. Level 4 is about people development. Maxwell likes to say, leaders become great not because of their power, but because of their ability to empower others. So if you may have success, but without a successor, ultimately that will equal failure. To last, a team needs to be able to grow and to improve. It's the leader's responsibility to develop other people, to help them reach their personal potential, and to become leaders themselves. This leads to reproduction. In other words, teams can create other teams. There's a positive side effect here. That's loyalty. You can win the hearts and minds of your team by helping them to grow personally. Teams and organizations go to a whole new level when the leaders begin to develop others. You always say, you hear train the trainer or find your replacement. Well, this is what this is really all about. So Maxwell wants you to ask yourself several questions on this level of people development, level 4. First is, am I passionate about my personal growth? So only growing people are effective at growing others. Does my growth journey have credibility? So if you don't believe in the messenger, you won't believe in the message. Are people attracted to me because of my growth? So people want to learn from leaders they see are growing and learning. And if you're not doing that, you're really not getting a lot of credibility there. Am I successful in the areas where I want to develop others? So you can't give what you do not have. So you shouldn't help others in areas where you should be helping others in areas where you are already successful. Have I crossed over the spend time, invest time line? You need to become an investor in people. Add value, but expect to see a return on your investment. Do I have a teachable way of life? To develop other people, you need to remain teachable. So if you want people to learn from you, you need to keep on learning, not only from outside, but also from the people that you're working with. Am I willing to be vulnerable? Am I willing to be a vulnerable role model and coach? And finally, do the people I develop succeed? So the ultimate goal is developing people helps them transform their lives improve, lives change. And as they like to say in Freemasonry, we can make good men better. So how can you tell if that's happened? Simply, those of you have invested in are succeeding themselves. And finally, level 5 is the pinnacle. Pinnacle is all about reputation. Very few reach this level, but Maxwell says all should strive for it. And then finally, I'll end with a quote here. Those who have led well and proven their leadership over a lifetime have invested in other leaders and raised them up to level 4 and have developed influence not only in their own organizations, but beyond them. So many people who have become good leaders, you will find maybe really good leaders within Masonry. But if you look at them outside of Masonry, you're going to find that they have really good reputations and they're leading outside as well. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we're covering a few chapters from the book tonight. We're just giving you kind of a quick synopsis of each of those. We are prepared to go out at some point, and Bill will talk about this more later, and do a longer presentation for developing a leader within you 2.0 as a full day presentation where we cover everything, and we'll have different activities that will help expand upon the things that we're covering very quickly here this evening. So with that, let me stop sharing my portion. And I'm going to pass things over to Bob Siebold.
Yes, sir. All right, here we go. Can you all see my screen, hopefully? Everybody good? Thumbs up?
Yeah. Thumbs up.
Yes.
Very good. All right, there we go. Very good. Make it big for you. So tonight, what I'm going to be covering is obviously same book, Developing the Leader Within You 2.0. I had never read this book before. I thought it was a really great book. It gave me a lot of insight. And Rick asked me to give a review of chapter 2, which is called Priorities. Before that, what I'll do is I'd like to introduce myself. Again, my name is Bob Siebold. I'm the Assistant Director of Membership Development for the Northern Masonic Jurisdiction of Scottish Rite. I'm very proud to work for the Scottish Rite. It's a great first-class organization. I'm a past Commander-in-Chief of the Valley of the Hudson. I'm currently in the Deputies Rep also for that valley. And for those of you who know me, don't blame me for my personality, but I grew up with Bill Toth, all right, in this little city called Brooklyn, New York. So, it's all him. I'm blaming him tonight. I'm shifting the blame over to him. So there you go. He took a lot of liberties with me in my formidable years. So I'm sorry. I'll apologize now. All right. But anyway, so chapter 2 is the key to leadership. We're going to talk about priorities. So let me go to my next screen here. So prioritizing is a key element of leadership. When your schedule is drowned by random unordered tasks, it halts your productivity. And I can tell you, you get what's known as corporate or fraternal burnout, and that's what you don't want. So tackling your duties in an orderly fashion is, according to importance, is the best way to keep a schedule running smoothly. I'll tell you what I do on a personal level every day. I have a cell phone that alerts me to tasks that need attention. I have a personal and corporate calendar that I follow to the second. But I will tell you each and every day, and you can call me old school. I don't really care. I think I put the boom and boomer. I still write down a list of things I need to do, and I prioritize them in 3 ways. First and foremost is what I call my must-dos. These are things that I have to accomplish. Number 2 is get them done if there's time. All right, there's my secondary priorities. And then I always set aside what I call time for me to keep balance in my life. That can be something as simple as, taking a walk, walking the dog, going out and getting some sunshine, walking away from your computer, getting some lunch, grabbing a cup of coffee. It doesn't matter, but you need to have that time for yourself. And this is what Maxwell is talking all about in chapter 2. So let me take you through responsibility. Now, I don't want to mislead anyone here, because what Maxwell is not saying is, he's not saying multitasking is bad. That's not what he's saying. What he's saying is that it's okay to multitask, but sometimes what you need to think about is, how can I do that multitasking, but do one task at a time, but do it really, really well? So leadership brings with it lots of responsibilities. Choosing which ones to deal with first should be based on importance. So what you really ought to think about is finishing one task at a time by allocating your full time to it, rather than splitting your energy on multiple secondary tasks at once. So I find with myself, and I will tell you, in my job with the Northern Masonic jurisdiction, my phone is ringing constantly from brothers saying, I need to pay my dues. Someone unfortunately reporting a death. Someone saying I'm having problems getting on Journey 365. I can't get into my member center. So you've got to be able to switch gears. But what I don't do is when the phone is ringing, I don't put that person I'm working with on hold and grab that phone and say, okay, I'll be right with you. I let that person go to voicemail. I finish what I'm doing with the individual I'm talking to, go to my voicemail, and I tackle the next problem. Because what I find personally for myself is by finishing one task at a time really helps me do my job in a much better way. So think about that. You can still multitask, but you really want to make sure that you're checking the box and getting those priorities done. What Maxwell talks about is the 3 R's, and really, I really like that. And really, if you were to give a synopsis of this, he's saying that you got to think about what's the requirement of the task, what's the return on investment, what's the ROI of time and people as it relates to the task, and what's the reward or the gain to time put into the task. So you want to use the 3 R's, and they stand for requirement, return, and reward. So to determine your priorities, you want to make sure to ensure high rewards. You want to prioritize the task only you can do. So you want to make sure, again, what's required, what yields the greatest return of your time, and what task should be at the top of your priority. So again, things that are really important go to the top. Things that are not so important go to the bottom. We're going to talk a little bit about this a little more in my presentation, but there's something called the Pareto principle. And that states that 20% of your priorities result in 80% of your production. And this principle applies to relationships with people as well. So what Maxwell's saying is, and what I want you to think about is focus on the 20%. You've probably heard 80% of the work gets done by 20% of the people. That analogy fits pretty well into this environment. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. The other thing that Maxwell also stresses is keeping a margin. I had to read this section a couple of times to really understand what he means. But what he's saying here is keep a margin of free time on your calendar, because that's as important as accomplishing top priority tasks. Having the necessary time for recuperation is essential for sustainability. That's where that burnout comes in. So you want to make sure that you allocate time for yourself every day. Working nonstop leads to exhaustion, which results in lower quality task completion. I bet all of you right now could tell me someone who works like a demon, works really, really hard, never stops. And unfortunately, it leads to health problems. It leads to inability to take on other tasks, and it leads to burnout. And that's what Maxwell is saying. He's saying, you know what? Don't allow that in your life. Give yourself margin. Give yourself that time to really focus to yourself. So if you break it down, leadership is really a definitive way to look at yourself and to look at the job that you've been asked to do. So let's take that granular look at the definitive keys to leadership. So on the screen, you're seeing what's known as the Eisenhower matrix. It's a simple decision-making tool that helps you make the distinction between tasks that are important, not important, urgent, and not urgent. It splits tasks into 4 boxes to prioritize which tasks you should focus on first and which you should delegate or delete. Now, if you're a history junkie like myself, when I read a little bit more about that Eisenhower matrix, what I did realize, and did not know this, was Eisenhower, when he was leading the Allied forces during World War II, actually used this decision-making process when he was battling the Nazis and the Japanese and whoever else was involved in World War II. So he used this system. So what's so important about setting priorities, and what benefits can this bring? So for those who have leadership experience, it's obvious that getting clarity and prioritizing tasks is one of the most beneficial things to do, not only for obtaining better results, but also for increasing the morale of your coworkers. So one of the main reasons employees get stressed out is the overwhelming feeling of uncertainty about their work, progress, and results. Just taking time to prioritize the task together with them will not only calm them down, but will also help them to concentrate better and thus having better results. So one of the best ways to do this is to split the tasks based on their value. And that's what the Eisenhower matrix actually addresses. If you're a fan of Stephen Covey, and I've read the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he also calls something very similar to this, but he calls it the priority quadrant. So Maxwell says then to increase productivity and quality of life, we should focus more on the tasks from the second quadrant and try to remove as much as we can from the ones in the fourth one. This means we'll always act on the most important things before they become urgent, thus reducing the tasks in the first quadrant and stress the links to them. So that sounds like a lot, when I'm saying this, but what I've done for you on the next slide is, and I think this is where you guys are really going to get the idea of what the Eisenhower matrix is. What I've done is I wanted to relate the Eisenhower matrix to the work we do in Scottish Rite. So quadrant number 1, that's where things are urgent, important, they need to be scheduled. Things with clear deadlines and consequences for not taking immediate action. So what would be a quadrant? What would fall in there if you were working on something for your Scottish Rite Valley? So let's say we're working on a reunion. All right. Well, the reunion, you have to set a date. You have to reserve the lodge building. You got to order the food for breakfast and lunch. Those are things that are urgent, they're important, and they need to be done. In quadrant 2, that's where you've got things that are not so urgent. They're still important, but you need to schedule them. But they're activities without a set deadline that brings you closer to your goals. Well, again, we're planning out a Valley reunion. That's where we maybe pick the degrees. We utilize video degrees or live degrees. How are we going to do it? Are we gonna do a little bit of both? Are we gonna do all live degrees? Are we gonna do a cinematic degree day? How are we gonna do it? It's important, but it's not urgent. Quadrant three, not important. You can delegate these tasks out, these responsibilities, things that need to be done, but don't require your specific skill set. So let's say, for instance, you're a really good project manager, but you're not really a good marketeer. Okay, well, again, we're back to the Valley reunion. You need somebody to market the event. They've got to put together social ads on Facebook, flyers, invitations, choosing a degree director, or creating a program. That's not really in your wheelhouse, but you can parse that out to someone else. So again, it's not that important, so you can delegate it. And when I say not important, it's not important to you. And quadrant 4 is not important at all. You can actually even delete it if you wanted to. It almost acts as a distraction to you, and it burdens to stifle the true project productivity. So again, let's get back to that Valley reunion. What color are the paper napkins? Does it really matter? Doesn't. Should we valet park or self-parking? Again, it doesn't matter. Should we serve Coke or Pepsi? It doesn't really matter. So again, what's great about the Eisenhower's matrix is that as a leader, it allows you to do a couple of things. It allows you to embrace what's important. It allows you to take a look at the things that are urgent, but still important, but you can get back to them. Then the things that are not so important, and being able to, again, parse that out to other people, delegating, and then obviously in that quadrant 4, things that are not really that emergent. All right, you can kind of walk away from them. I liked a couple of quotes. A guy named John Green, he's got a popular YouTube channel. It's called The Vlog Brothers. Sums it up. He says, productivity need not be about work or maximizing output or whatever. There are lots of ways to be productive. To me, though, productivity is mostly a matter of recognizing that time is what we have. So stop thinking about speed and start thinking about purpose. To begin making truly smarter, more conscious choices when it comes to project tasks, you need to know the difference between important and urgent. So I really love this Eisenhower matrix. I think it makes a whole lot of sense. I told you we get back to this Pareto principle, and it's otherwise known as the 80-20 rule. So the Pareto principle stands by the principle of focusing on about 20% of your activities because they would generate 80% of the results. So what you need to do with the Pareto principle is reflect on how you usually set your priorities. The long-term objective is to balance requirements, profits, and reward. Ask yourself the following questions when you're considering the Pareto principle. What is the activity you usually receive compliments for? What are people saying? Wow, Bill Toth, you do this really well. What is the usual activity asked of you? Hey, Bill, can you be our degree director because we know you're a great ritualist, all right? What activities can you do to increase your results, potential recognition, or betterment of the team? So if I'm Bill and I've been asked to be the degree director because I really know the Scottish Rite ritual really well, what I'm going to try to do is pull in some of the best and brightest ritualists in the Valley. How as a leader can you focus the Pareto principle on key members of your team and make a project more successful? It's exactly what I just said. It's parsing those responsibilities out. You're still the leader of the project. You're still that degree director, but you're going to parse it out to people who are going to make the project really sing. So in essence, the Pareto principle then is saying that utilizing fewer resources and focusing your expertise and energy the correct way really does achieve greater results. And I've seen this happen in my personal, my business life, and certainly in my fraternal life. The other thing that we've got to think about is setting up that margin. That the margin is the space that exists between the tasks we need to finish and our own limitations. You need to know more about yourself. And this is a very introspective thing that I like to Maxwell put into the book. It's establishing your own personal margin. So multiple studies have concluded that about 90% of the leaders who obtain excellent results have a great EQ level. EQ stands for emotional intelligence, also known as emotional quotations, or EQ. It's the ability to understand, use, and manage your own emotions in positive ways to relieve stress, communicate effectively, empathize with others, overcome challenge, and actually it helps diffuse conflict. So the recognition and understanding of your own emotions can be developed by reflection, especially when you're alone. Those moments are hard to find when you're overwhelmed with work and have no time for introspection. This is why it would be a great idea to have planned intervals of time when you have nothing to do, nothing to say, because you're running on empty. You don't want to go from one meeting to another and not leave any time for thinking. You want to have that, that what they call blue space, that time to think. So in other words, the margin increases your EQ. Even if you're, a man of action, people always say, hey, that Rick Powell, give him something to do, give him a task, man, he gets it done. But Rick still needs to sit down and think, okay, if I'm leading this project or I've been in charge of something, I got to think, how am I going to do it? I need to space that time out. So to become an effective leader, if you do not reserve time to think about important actions, you're really shortchanging yourself. So as a leader, you must see more before others do, and that's very important. So having a margin, especially with energy levels, is hugely important. People are not made to just keep working. They need that moment of relaxation. You can get that with more sleep, physical exercise, listening to music. As a leader, this is especially important that your level energy is contagious. You ever been in a room when you're around a leader who's just so electric, you want to be just like him or her? It's the same thing here. So how do we create this margin? Well, the formula, according to Maxwell, is made up of 3 variables. The first thing is planning. Try to have 20% of your time not planned. Even if it sounds counterintuitive, you just want to kind of say, you know what, I'm going to take care of myself, or I'm going to do some other things during that 20% of your time. Apply the Pareto principle and focus on what's more important. Is it more important for me to clear my head and go out for a walk, or to answer 2 or 3 more emails? I can always get back to the emails, but I'm going to lose that time because it's beautiful sunshiny day and it's 70 degrees and I want to take care of that. All right. The other thing is delegation. Try to delegate as much as possible the tasks from the Eisenhower matrix, because again, these are non-important tasks. And remember, and this is really huge, and this is when Freemasonry, this is in your personal life, your corporate life, it doesn't matter. It's all about mental health and balance in your life. So that's really what the whole chapter 2 is all about. So Rick, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to turn it back over to you, sir.
Okay, let's flip it right over to our good friend Bill Edwards. Bill, you're up.
Alrighty, good evening, everyone. I'm Bill Edwards from the Valley of Rochester. Just getting my screen share going here. Okay. And can you see it okay?
Yep.
Okay, well, it just started at the beginning. Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, you're all good.
Okay.
Looks good.
All right, I'm getting there. Sorry about that. I had it, okay. So, hi, good evening. I'm Bill Edwards from the Valley of Rochester. I'm on the Excelsior project and also chairman of the Masonic Leadership Academy for Grand Lodge. Both of those programs are for developing leadership and personal growth and development, leveraging the Maxwell curriculum. And myself, Bob, and Rick are all certified Maxwell trainers, facilitators, and coaches. And it's a pleasure to be here tonight. I'm going to be talking about 2 chapters from the book. The first is character, and just wanted to share some reflections on that for you to consider. Particularly in our relationship with Freemasonry, we know that character is important. And Maxwell defines it as one of the foundations of leadership. When thinking about character, it can be defined as the mental or moral qualities distinctive to an individual. And often with leadership, we think about doing and busy accomplishing something. When we think about character, it's more about being who we are. So as I go through this, I just want you to use these thoughts as a reflective moment just to think about character and how it applies both to Freemasonry and then what lessons you might draw from that for yourself. The reality is that leading ourselves is one of the most difficult tasks we face every day. Constantly faced by challenges and decisions that we have to make, and those choices that we make over time define our character. Having good character does not ensure that you will be successful in life or leadership, but if you have poor character, it will eventually derail you, both personally and professionally. So it's one of those things where if you're running with a constant deficit of character, it will catch up to you eventually. Quoting the constitutions of Grand Lodge with the Masonic belief, one of the items is that character determines destiny. So in a sense, we do own our destiny by the choices that we make. One of the things I found interesting with Maxwell is he defined the dimensions of character. And character is not about intelligence, but it's about making the right choices. And he offered 4 dimensions that came from a book called Derailed by Tim Irwin. The first is authenticity. And when he gave an example of this, it came back to me thinking about our mosaic pavement in masonry, where we talk about being checkered with black and white, or the good and bad of life. And what he talked about is that you live in the middle of life, or the middle of the lane, so you share both aspects of that mosaic pavement. That if you're always just showing your excesses, if you're just showing up on Facebook and showing, the best of life, it loses an authenticity because people don't see the struggles that you're going through. And the same time, if you're always just sharing your struggles, but never things that you're proud of, your accomplishments, it has that other negative effect. But finding that middle path of showing both aspects to your life helps generate authenticity, that people will feel connected to you, and then that helps develop character. The next is self-management. And we know this from our Masonic teachings that it's about subduing our discordant passions. And what's important with this is that it's not every passion. There's a time for anger, but with self-management, it's the question of, does the anger control you, or do you control the anger? And in those moments when you're going to make those choices, if you're bringing those discordant passions into harmony with what you're trying to accomplish, then you'll be able to, again, develop character over time. The next is humility. Where do you seek and get validation? As Masons, we believe in the great architect, something greater than ourselves. And that immediately puts us in that humble position. If you think about, much of our ritual refers to that we're in that path, brothers have gone before. In the Scottish Rite, we refer to reverence as one of the values. And I think there's a certain humility that comes from that. The second is, are we in it because we're about titles, or are we in it because we want to be of service to help others? Where are we seeking to get that validation? And lastly, do we have courage to do the right thing in face of fear, fatigue, and uncertainty? In Masonic terms, it's about fortitude, right? Showing up and doing what needs to be done. Character makes you bigger on the inside. In Masonry, we talk about it's the internal, not the external qualifications. The inner voice that wants to make you bigger on the inside. And by that, by listening to that inner voice of who we truly are, understanding our values, understanding our beliefs, and trying to live those day in and day out, helps make us bigger on the inside. And by doing that on the inside, that then affects the outside. If we're just focusing on the voice from the outside, an example could be marketing, it could be social media. whatever those distractions are that are telling us we need to purchase this or do this or accomplish this to be successful. If we're just focusing on those things, then we're not really developing that inner person of who we are, which is really those inner qualifications. I thought this was interesting because it says, if your soul lacks a center when life comes at you fast, you'll be thrown off the bull. No matter how hard you try to hold on, eventually you will get thrown. And this reminded me when we talk about a soul lacking a center, there's a Masonic symbol we have about the point within the circle. And again, that's another illustration of that idea of finding that center point for that balance to be able to handle what's thrown at you. And I thought this quote was caused me to pause. Emergencies don't develop character, they reveal it. And again, I thought that was very telling because oftentimes things are thrown at us and we react. And if we haven't done the soul work, if we haven't done the inner work to develop who we are, what's important to us, in those moments when we don't have time to think, we may not make those choices we really want to make. But if we have done that work, then it's going to reveal who we really are on the inside. Could be that moment of when someone is in need and do you stop and help or you just keep walking? Or it could be a crisis. Do you stop and help your fellow man and be of service to others or think about only your own safety? One of the things Maxwell talks about is how do you actually develop character? And he mentioned 3 steps. The first is living your values. The second is practice of self-leadership or self-management. And the last is valuing people. And that had me come back to think about the Scottish Rite core values. And we have 6 core values around reverence for God, justice, integrity, tolerance, service, and devotion to country. And I thought it was interesting to go back. What was written about them in 2010 was that core values are not descriptions of what men do. They describe how to be. Again, how we're being. Core values are not strategies or maneuvers to achieve selfish goals. Core values are not tools by which to get an advantage in business or relationship or life. They should guide us in making decisions, predominant in personal relationships, reveal humanity, and show what it stands for. And then over here, you can see how throughout our different degrees, different core values are represented or taught. The second chapter I wanted to touch on briefly was around personal growth. And Rick mentioned this when he talked about the different levels of leadership, and one of them was about expansion and growing others. And personal growth and development, it's thinking back to Freemasonry, it's really in the DNA of Freemasonry. It's what we came here to do. We came to learn, subdue our discordant passions, and improve ourselves in Masonry. And if we remember, all our ritual is about building, and we are builders of a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual temple, and we make that journey from rough ashlars to perfect ashlars. And Maxwell says, as leaders, we're challenged that we must continually grow and develop. And one of the reasons for that is it's about our capacity. And what our leadership capacity is going to determine our capacity to lead. So this is explained easily through this chart. We can work hard and say that we put in a little effort, we may be at a 1. But then if we put in a lot of effort, we might be at a 7 or an 8. And we're working really hard day in and day out, but we're not getting different results. But by learning, by growing, by improving our leadership ability, we can then improve on this axis as well. So now where we were maybe here at a 4, just by learning how to be a better leader, how to have improving our skills, we now are actually here. And then we get a magnification of our efforts. So by working both on, yes, it's important to work hard and be committed, but it's also important to improve and grow. And a quote that's related from Maxwell says, developing yourself to become the leader you have the potential to be will change everything for you. It will add to your effectiveness, subtract from your weaknesses, divide your workload, and multiply your impact. Now, transitioning into the importance of learning, and when we talk about Maxwell in general, We all know that knowledge is not enough. To adopt a new habit or behavior takes real work and effort. And we have to go beyond what I would call the intellectual comfort of the armchair and get dirty in the complex quarry of life. And a lot of it is we think that we know something and we've learned about it, but we all know the difference between um, reading about something and then actually trying to do it. Particularly if you're doing a repair project at home. I've done a few where you watch the YouTube video and it looks real simple, and then you go to do it and it doesn't quite go that way. And it's the same thing with everything in life. It's easy to watch and observe. It's a lot different if you're actually the quarterback in the game. One of the things that Maxwell does is, and I found this to be useful, we often want perfection. That if, and Rick mentioned this about leadership, where he said that you just start, you don't wait until you're in that position, you don't wait till someday. But with the Maxwell method, we learn a little, we try a little, we reflect, we adjust and repeat. So if you see something here today that strikes your interest, try it out. Learn a little. You've shown up. Thank you for coming. You've learned. Now try it out. Then reflect on it and say, how did it go? And then adjust and repeat. And by doing that, if that just becomes a habit, you'll be constantly growing day in and day out. And remember that it's continual learning and growing is a process. It's not a destination. It's a journey for your life. What's important with learning and growing, and this comes from the 15 invaluable laws of growth, is there's a difference between accidental growth and intentional growth. And his first law was that with the law of intentionality, growth doesn't just happen, and that you need to actually be intentional about it. If you're going through school age and you're in elementary or middle school, high school, or possibly going on to college, there's structured growth that's happening. But at some point in life, you just get busy and you're working day in and day out. And if you don't intentionally plan to grow, then it's not going to happen. So things that you can do is insist on starting it today. Take complete responsibility for your growth. Learn from your mistakes. Rely on hard work, perseveres and works hard, fights for good habits, follows through and takes risks. Thinks like a learner, has curiosity, relies on their character, and never stops growing. And accidental growth is you wait for it to happen. A good example would be when life happens to you. Suddenly, if you have a medical condition, you've suddenly forced to change by your environment. If a death of a loved one could do that, an accident could occur. Something like that happens, a loss of a job. You're suddenly now forced. That would be more accidental growth that came upon you, whereas intentional growth is that you're trying to make it happen. And one of the things that you could consider doing is much like we talk about having a trestle board within Lodge, you could have your personal growth plan or your personal trestle board. And as going through this training, what we challenge our participants to do is to come up with a personal growth goal that would be both a soft skill and a hard skill. So soft skill could be learning how to communicate better, for instance, and a hard skill might be learning a new technology. And then having a personal growth journal to reflect your progress. And consistency is what's important. Talking about the Maxwell method and Masonry, I strongly believe that the John Maxwell program can be applied to Freemasonry as a practical method for the brothers to do the work. Our ritual explains the who, what, when, where, and why, but we don't really have the how. That how do I actually get better? How do I change my habits? How do I improve my communication abilities? How do I learn a new language? How do I start meditating? Whatever it may be, and how I view it as is that our life is the great work. And that's could be called spiritual alchemy, our magnum opus, our masterpiece. And as we improve ourselves physically, mentally, both through emotional intelligence and intellectual intelligence and spirituality, that aids in our journey for light. And that's our intentional how of Masonry. And remember that continual learning and growing is a process. It's learn a little, try a little, reflect, adjust, and repeat. As Rick mentioned, we will have offerings that are going to be coming out to the valleys. We'll be bringing out Everyone Communicates, Few Connect again. We did that in Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse, and we'll be doing an online Zoom session for that, as well as looking to other valleys on the east side of the state to do that. There's a book called How to Be Real Success, of which focuses on relationship, equipping others, attitude, and leadership. There'll be some training around that. There's the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. And then as we're talking about today, there's the Developing the Leader Within You 2.0 will be coming out. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for your time, and glad that you could join us tonight. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Let me change our view here. There we go. Okay. Thanks, Bill. Bill is actually the master Maxwell guru here in the state of New York. So he really has embraced the Maxwell material, and as he so masterfully has done, not only has he worked in Everyone Communicates, Few Connect, which we've touched on before in the past, along with Developing the Leader Within You 2.0. But he's also mentioned the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. These are all programs that Bill, Bob, and I are qualified to train. So we're here to be able to do that. And Bill's got some things in the pipeline that will be joint Grand Lodge of New York, as well as New York Council Deliberation Excelsior Team programs coming up. And if your valley or your lodge is interested in a presentation or a workshop, I would ask that you all reach out to one of the three of us, or you can email us generally at xlcr32@gmail.com. So do we have any questions? And please feel free to unmute yourself.
Yeah, Rick, Caleb said that he really enjoyed the video. He thanked us very much, which was awesome. Tom Whitney asked, appreciate this compared to other various ways has this been presented. So I mean, this is our first roll with this tonight, but we could obviously do this in a live format if we wanted to.
Correct. Yeah. So like we said, we covered briefly 4 chapters, but there's a ton of other material in the book, and there's presentation materials too that we have access to be able to do a long form take on this material.
Yeah. Brothers, if you'd like to, you can certainly open up your video. Keep yourself muted until you're ready to speak, but feel free to open up your video.
Any questions, comments?
Go ahead, Bill.
Go ahead, Bill.
I was going to say just 2 quick observations from my own personal experience. Number one, I would echo what's been said in the comments about this being well done. But when Rick was talking about level 4 positional leaders, one of the things that was emphasized to me early in my career was if you don't train others to take on your responsibilities, there's no way you can grow yourself. So basically, insecure leaders are ones that don't train those under them to take on additional responsibilities. And then with respect to the Eisenhower quadrant, my boss at my most recent job explained early on that he kind of used a variation of that when he made decisions and said, if you come to me with something and you feel like I've put you in a lower quadrant, you need to tell me why. What am I missing that I should elevate your concern to a higher level? Just because you go to them and say, this is important, I think you need to move it up, that's not good. You need to be prepared with why you should deal with it rather than delegate it.
100%. 100%.
I think what was really nice about the presentation tonight is it's not just the John Maxwell training program, which he's trained thousands and thousands of people from all different areas, but relating it to Freemasonry, and particularly with some of Bill's comments, talking about how this is what we do, but maybe this is more the how-to manual. to help people get there. So good job to all the presenters.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
I
Yeah,
really enjoyed sitting in this evening. For the few that know, I'm go way back. Been doing leadership seminars and whatever, 32 something years. So it was good to hear, like they say, not that it's disappeared, but what's old has become new again. And glad to see that. I guess my only comment, and it's not about any of the presentings or the works, that I've never been in favor of the word success. You know, I really wish people could find something else that could relate as well as that word. And I'll give you just a simple example of it, which I've used for a million years. And I'm going to use Ted Williams because I'm a Boston originally and a Red Sox fan still. So let's say I'll round off the numbers. 1 year, several years in his career, his hit batting average was 400. But what does that mean? Really? Is that really success? I mean, when you say a batter has a 300, a 400 batting average, he failed 60% of the time. He failed 70% of the time. But it's considered success. So it's really the frame of reference and how others perceive what you have done that makes successful. And final thought on that is if you talk to entrepreneurs who, and I'll use the word, people feel are successful, and you talk to them, none of them really feel that they are or have been successful. Enjoyed it very much, Rich. I thank you very much for the invitation. Could keep up the good work. Loved it.
thanks, Al. It's good to see you. You know, one of the things Maxwell says about his material, and I think it's a criticism he sometimes get, is that, you know, a lot of stuff he talks about is just common sense in many ways. And it should be easy to do, but that's the point he likes to make out, that it's easy to say this stuff is common sense. It's putting it into practice that's the tough part. And I see Bill just turn his video back on. He's nodding. So Bill, would you like to add on to that?
I think that's the challenge, is you know, the joke of, hey, I just learned of something new today. It's called the gym. You know, who knew? I could go there, I could exercise, I'd lose weight, you know, I could meet people. I just learned about it today, right? We all know things. It's easy to know, but it's really hard to do. And that's the challenge. So making it simple makes it relatable that we can understand. And it doesn't make it so complicated that you're so caught up in trying to learn the material as opposed to applying the material. And I think that's, for me, that's what drew me to Maxwell, as well as because of his approach and style relates very nicely with Freemasonry. So many of the things he says have, for me, a direct connection to the things we talk about within Masonry. So that helps that resonate for me personally. And I think that's why I'm excited that we can offer the training to brethren, because there are those connections. So thank you, Rick.
Walt Disney has a great quote. He says, "The way to get started is to quit talking and just begin doing." So you're right. You know, I drive past the gym. Wow, I didn't know Planet Fitness. I thought that was a bakery. I know you go in there and do curls and, you know, get on a treadmill. That's amazing. That's just a great place, you know. So yeah, I think, you know, talking about it is wonderful, but you got to actually put it into action. So spot on with that.
And
Alan,
particularly when we talk about behaviors and habits, they say it takes 30 to 45 days to change a habit. And, you know, for instance, we can talk about emotional intelligence, and we all value tolerance until you're talking to somebody you disagree with, right?
Yeah.
and that's, again, gets back to that kind of thing, that in those moments, it's when it matters. And for me, emotional intelligence, the aha I had was, it's just not playing nice in the sandbox, but it's becoming aware of your emotions, that you can actually catch yourself as you get triggered, as those things happen. And then you have that self-regulation, and those are some very powerful things when they talk about neuroplasticity and things with the brain and learning, just amazing stuff that's being developed and thought about. And because it's within Maxwell, we can bring all that in under that framework to help offer ideas to everyone. So again, thanks to everyone showing up tonight. Good. Very enjoyed it. Thank you.
Right.
It's interesting when when I went to see Maxwell live down in Florida, you know, I never realized it, but in this book he talks about that margin, and he talks about setting aside time for yourself. I remember, you know, the lunchtime when you go for a live Maxwell training, it's 2 hours, and I said, geez, I can knock back lunch in about 8 minutes. I mean, and I've got all this time. Why have I got all this time? And what I realized was he'd actually say, have lunch, meet other people, communicate with other people, take a walk, you know, go out and you know, breathe some fresh air and come back refreshed. Now I get it. You know, that's the reason they do that in those seminars, is to do all those things, but more importantly, to set up that margin in your life. So that resonated in this book for me tremendously. And the other thing is delegation. I bet you everyone on this call is absolutely positively guilty of managing a project in their valley, their lodge, there's a personal life, whatever, and you do everything. And you sit back and you're exhausted and you say to yourself, why didn't I, you know, get Bill to help me with this, or Alan to help me with that? They're actually probably better at it than I am. So he emphasizes that dramatically in the book too. And I that resonated really well with me. So I really thought that was great. But thank you all for being here tonight. It was wonderful to be here. Alan, we got to get you to be a star presenter, man. I mean, 35 years. Good Lord. You can keep that background too. I love it.
Don't age me. I only said 32.
Okay, there you go.
Well, we started with Shelley Blank when he started making the changes. So that's what all got started. When I left, I see things kind of got lost for a few years in New York. I'm glad they're kind of getting back to where they should be. We're not going to get into why and wherefores there, but like I said, I'm glad to see it back.
It's all your fault, Al. You made me district deputy way back almost 20 years ago, actually. So we did Grand Lodge officer training here in Syracuse on Saturday, and I realized that Chris Heberly and I were the two old guys in the room. Maybe not necessarily by age, but in terms of having done the whole leadership thing in the past. When I sat back and realized I was district deputy 2006 to 2008, that was a long time ago, and things have changed. So, one of the things that I brought up on Saturday too was, not to get too full of yourself. And, if you're in one of these leadership positions, you're going to be out just as quick as you're in. And if you want to continue to be effective or to be involved with things, the real trick is to involve other people. And as I said during my portion, and was reiterated through Bob's and Bill's, you need to keep on learning yourself as well as teach. So you need to keep teaching, but you still need to be teachable. There's always something new to learn. There's always great people. And I think the greatest part of Freemasonry are the people, and the people that you meet along the way, and the extensional families that you create if you open yourself up to getting beyond your own ego, and I think you really can make yourself a lot better. So
I have a question. So Jeff Soper, where is Internet Lodge? Where is that? What state is that in, sir?
United Grand Lodge of England in Manchester.
Do you live in England?
No, I live in Dayton, Ohio, but
Okay.
I'm a steward and an ambassador for Internet Lodge to the United States.
That's neat. Okay.
And I'm also the master of Goose and Gridiron Lodge here in Ohio, which is we use the English emulation ritual.
That's very neat. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
No
Thank
problem.
you for being here.
very good. Yeah, we do have quite a few brothers here from Ohio, and maybe one or two from elsewhere. I think somebody in here might be from. Is there somebody here from Illinois? Don't know. And well, Abby Brewer just hopped on a little while ago too. So welcome, Abby. Good to have you on. You missed everything, but you can catch it on the recording.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure. He's just here to listen and learn from you and illustrious brother Siebold, and and the fantastic Czar of New York, illustrious Brother Morris.
Thank you, Abby.
All right, well, gentlemen,
Yep.
it is 8:11. Mike would as our deputy for
Yeah,
New
I'm just gonna say it's a great team. That's we put the Excelsior team together, and this is the third season for doing this. It's both leadership and lecture series. So we have lectures throughout the year as well. So it's a terrific team, and as you can see, lots of energy and doing good things. So I want to thank the entire team for all that you do.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for spending time with Excelsior 32. The experiences, comments, opinions, and views shared on this program are those of individual Freemasons and do not reflect the official position of any Grand Lodge, Concordant, or Pendant body. Until we meet again, keep on reaching higher.